Okay, last but not least, objective 3, more interpretation to go. So let's really break down this regression line equation. So we know that it's slope-intercept form, right? So the y-intercept here in this equation, the a, right? It's the a. And what it does is it is the predicted value of y when x is 0. And again, think about where the y-intercept goes. It's on the y-axis where x is 0. Okay. The slope then is the b in the formula. It's the b. And again, it describes the predicted change in y for each 1 unit increase in x. And that's exactly how we're going to interpret it, as you see in the next example. Now, a couple cautions. Caution number 1, make sure you include the word predicted when you do the interpretation, because again, that's what y hat means. The hat means predicted, right? And then number 2, a big note is sometimes in some contexts, the y-intercept doesn't have meaning. And that's because x equals 0 doesn't make sense. Sometimes you can't have an x value of 0. All right. So be aware of that. It just depends on the context. And we'll talk about how to answer both ways. Okay. All right. Okay, example 3. So again, back to that same example. More taps, more soda. In the preceding example about tapping on cans, the equation of the regression line is y hat equals 248.6 plus 2.63x, where x equals tapping time in seconds and y equals the amount of soda remaining in milliliters. Interpret the slope of the regression line. Okay, so we're looking at slope here, right? So the slope, again, if I put this over here, y hat equals a plus bx, the slope is the b. So there's my slope, 2.63. Again, this is the b value, 2.63. So our interpretation will look like this. The predicted amount of soda remaining, so this is what we're measuring, right? Soda remaining in the can. So that is me pretty much talking about the predicted y value, right? The predicted amount of soda remaining in the can. And now we look at the plus sign, and because it is positive, we're going to say increases by 2.63 millimeters for each additional second that the can is tapped. The predicted amount of soda remaining in the can increases by 2.63 milliliters for each additional second that the can is tapped. So again, notice each additional second, that means an increase in 1 unit of the x, and it's in seconds. So again, the idea is that if I tap it for an extra second, I'm going to save 2.63 milliliters of soda from spilling out. Okay, and that's the slope. Change in predicted y for each 1 change in x. All right, B, does the value of the y-intercept have meaning? If so, interpret the y-intercept. If not, explain why. So now I'll change colors. So you can see that now I'm looking at the A value, right? So now the A value is 248.6. So the question is, does this have meaning? So the question you have to ask yourself is, does it make sense for x to equal 0? Well, x is tapping time. Does it make sense for them to tap no seconds? Well, I would think so, right? Because that's sort of like your control group. When we talk about chapter 3 and experimenting, you have to have like a control group that kind of stays steady, whereas the other ones have a variable that's changing. Well, no tapping is staying steady. So I think, yes, it does. If x equals 0 did not make sense, you would say, no, the y-intercept does not have meaning. It does not make sense to have an x value equal to blank, right? You would just say that. But because it does have value, we'll say, yes, the y-intercept has meaning because it is possible to tap the can for 0 seconds. And again, if it didn't have meaning, I would say no, the minor step does not have meaning because it is not possible to tap the can for 0 seconds, something like that. And now we have to, because it does exist, we have to briefly interpret it. So it's this idea of, if a can is tapped 0 seconds, if a can is tapped for 0 seconds, the predicted amount of soda remaining is 248.6 milliliters. There you go. If a can is tapped for 0 seconds, the predicted amount of soda remaining is 248.6 milliliters. And there you go. Very important section. Hopefully it all made sense to you. Good luck on your homework.